Hi friends, welcome back to another monthly wrap up. I cannot believe it. We're already at the end of November and I have watched a lot this month and there is so much, so much different types of content. I've watched a lot of TV shows, some I'm proud of, some I'm not. I'll leave that till the end. But first off, before we jump straight into everything I watched this month, I want to thank today's sponsor, which is my Patreons. Thank you so much if you are a member of my Patreon. Patrons will know they get not only bonus content every single week, such as Come With Me's, trailer reactions. I reacted recently to the new teaser trailer of Terrifier 3. I had some thoughts and feelings, but you can also have the option to be on my Discord and watch movies every month with me on Zoom. You guys truly keep my channel afloat, so I just want to give a big shout out to my patrons. If you've ever thought about becoming a member and supporting me and becoming part of our lovely community, head over to Patreon and search my name or use the link down in the description below. It's always there. Okay, now let's jump into what I watched this month. Okay, it was a strong start. I watched all of the Hell House LLC films. I did a comprehensive timeline. I took everything from all 4 films and put it in order, timeline order, linear, to understand the full events of the films because they don't occur in order, but then they also refer back to things that have happened in other ones, previous entities, etc. So I put that into a video which explains the whole series. I am very lucky that I obviously love horror and I love my job, and I had this interest and I thought, you know what, I'll make it into a video. I'm sure other people are as interested as I am in uncovering the puzzle, cracking the Da Vinci Code, and I couldn't find any resources online, so I made my own. But you can see, I'll get to fingernails in a second, but you can see there was a lot of that happening at the start of the month because I watched the whole series and then I decided to do the video, so I had to rewatch. There's a lot of Hell House LLC. Anyway, after that, or I guess in between all of that, I went to the cinema and I watched Fingernails. I know this is out on Apple TV now, but I went and saw it at the cinema as, you know, Apple movies, and a lot of movies are out in both now, and I love this movie. This is a sci-fi romantic film. It has a very Black Mirror premise. Let's just say it's about, I don't want to spoil anything because it is really good to go in blind, but it is about a woman who is seeking a job in a world where people are tested and their love can be tested for each other. And she's seeking a job within that industry. The film just so interesting. It is by a Greek director who worked with Yorgos, and you can really feel that little bit of element coming through, a little bit of lobster in there. What I just really love about this film is the conversational aspect. Just when you open up something like this into existence and this idea, it's endless, the combinations that can come from it. So it was really interesting just to see one story, but it felt very Black Mirror, you know, looking at technology and how that affects the human relationship. And yeah, I absolutely adored it. The performances were phenomenal, and I think I cried, I'm not too sure, but I just remember feeling very emotional afterwards. It's a very good film and I highly recommend it. After that, I finally watched No One Gets Out Alive. I watched this with my patrons on like a Netflix party. This is a movie I started maybe over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, when it hit Netflix. It's a Netflix original and I never got all the way to the end, but I'm so glad that I finally pushed through and watched it because this film is very average, let's say that. It's about a woman who goes and moves into this share house, but she's in a situation where she can't really leave. And when she's there, she realizes that something dangerous is happening. But there is a very exciting reveal in this film that is just jaw-dropping, amazing horror. Visually, it looks great, but you do have to really go through the motions of watching a very stereotypical danger in the house kind of situation. So if you're all right with that, I would recommend this one. It's on Netflix in most countries, so check it out. The next ones, I went through a bunch of disturbing movies for some disturbing movie lists, and I have listed these films on a lot of them, so I won't touch on them too much. But Safe is one with Julianne Moore. I think that it's a disturbing film in a completely completely different way. The film shows a woman living this kind of stereotypical fantasy life, the 2.5 kids and the white picket fence kind of thing. Not even that, actually, like a class above that. And she is enjoying being a housewife, living in a little perfect bubble until something breaks it, and it's her health. And the film takes a look at her health. This film is really interesting because it can be viewed in several different ways, and I've seen different interpretations of what the actual horror or the unsettling feeling is while you watch it. Whether that's got to do with her and what she's going through her perspective, or the people around her who try to help her. So I think it's an interesting film to discuss, and I'm glad I watched it. It's very different, very strange. After this, I watched Nothing Bad Can Happen, which I will never forget this film. This is one of the most disturbing films I've ever seen in my whole life. If you watch it and say it's not, you're lying. You are a liar, because this I can't even believe it is a great film, but it's a very hard watch. It's inspired by true events, which is a little bit wonky, but it is inspired by true events. But it's about this boy who I think he's in it's called the Jesus Freaks, but he's in a Christian group, like it says an underground Christian punk movement. And he begins to have a relationship with this man. He like meeting him and developing like a platonic relationship with him, and is welcomed into his family. And when he decides to leave where he's staying, he is accepted with open arms into their house, but he doesn't know these people, and something very strange is going on with this family. You watch this complete downfall of not only his life, but a completely dysfunctional, toxic, abusive family, and him in the middle of it. That is just the tip of the iceberg. This film is very interesting because of the perspective from the lead, who is a devout Christian and believes in living the same way as Jesus does. So it's a very interesting perspective, and so his motives are all different. Anyway, very intense. I would recommend, if you're sensitive about anything, looking up all of the content warnings. Granny's Dancing on the Table. Phenomenal film. This is a Swedish drama, and it is about a girl who's isolated from society, and you come to find out why and how through the story of her grandma and how her grandma came to this area. It is told through puppets, so stop frame animation, half of it, and then the other half is you watching this girl go through the motions of living there. But a lot of it is this animation where you watch the granny and her sister and how they interact, and it's this whole thing. But it's a very well done film, and the way the story unfolds is really interesting and captivating. It's very tragic though. It is a disturbing film, but I would recommend it. Loved that one. I watched Pity, which is a Greek film about a man who was addicted to this sadness and feeling the attention of pity. It's very dry. If you like some dry sadness, check it out. Miss Meadows is the next one I watched, and this is really interesting because it's Katie Holmes in this just bizarre role I just could never have imagined she would be in. This film is about a woman whose whole life and aesthetic is set in, I don't know, like the 50s, 40s, 50s, and she is very polite, very proper, but she is hiding a immense secret and carrying a lot of baggage with her, and she isn't scared to get violent if she needs to, which is a complete contradiction on the way she looks and acts. She's also a teacher, so it's this interesting look at her when she moves to a new town and how she fits in and how that affects her identity, and you slowly get revealed why she is the way she is. I think it's a very interesting film. It's not the best, but I thought just watching her in this role was, I thought it was captivating. From here, I watched The Rapture, which is a film my friend Eric had recommended to me, but I was not a big fan. This is a Spanish drama, fantasy, thriller, horror, but it's just a very surrealist kind of film. It's about a filmmaker who, I can't have that on screen. It's about a filmmaker who gets obsessed with this other, this guy he meets along the way, a friend's cousin's film, and starts watching it. I don't know how to explain this one. It's got heavy abuse. It's just meant to be quite trippy and about self-identity. It didn't really work for me. I probably wouldn't recommend it. I'm so sorry, Eric, but I do appreciate the recommendation. No Way Home is a film. Oh, this is interesting. I don't know if it's good, but it's interesting. It's like Tim Roth playing a man who's just come back from jail, and he goes to his brother's house, and his brother has this new wife, and he tries to adjust back to society. He just keeps getting himself into trouble, and then the truth comes out about why he was sent to jail. It's a pretty basic story, but it's quite violent. Other than that, pretty straightforward, almost Lifetimey, just the way it goes through its structure. After this, I watched Cat Person. I could not rate this afterwards because I felt so many feelings. This is a very interesting film, and one I do really recommend to a lot of people who have similar taste to me. It's such a thinker. So this is based on a New York short story. It's about a girl who meets a guy, girl meets guy, and she's in college. You're just not too sure about their relationship, and it's kind of, I feel like there's so many interpretations of this, and I read a couple of people who, after they watched it, what they thought. A lot of people say it's meant to be perspective of like men and women, dating and heterosexual relationships. I love the film, and it was completely surprising. I said it was a mix of Promising Young Woman meets Girls, like the TV show. It's funny, but it's edgy, but it feels very dangerous in its messaging, and I think that's kind of the point, which is really interesting. They don't go full on stranger danger, but they go there and they just play around with all of this dangerous theming. So I really liked it though. I thought it was really interesting, and the characters I liked, I didn't expect to, and I don't know. I thought it was like a really captivating film because it's completely unpredictable. I didn't know where it was going to go next. It did feel like young adult at points, but then it felt like it was almost too mature at other points. So it's a very interesting and very unique film. So take that with what you will. I think you should watch it. I watched The Faculty afterwards. This was a watch with my patrons. Someone had been gunning for this for a long time. So Glenn, we got to watch The Faculty, which is a 90s classic. If you haven't seen it, it's a sci-fi horror about a group of students, and oh my god, the cast in this is insane, but a group of students who find out that not everything is as it seems in their school walls. We've got Josh Hartnett, Elijah Wood, Clea Duvall, Usher's in here, Selma Hayek, like everyone's in this film. It's wild. It's a very classic 90s horror, but it's also got this kind of grunge element to it that I really like. It feels very grungy, angsty teen, even though obviously all of the cast who are meant to be teenagers are in their 20s or maybe even 30s. I watched Appendage. This is one that everyone's been talking about because it's so sick. I did not expect it to be what it was. It's an interesting movie about a girl who's like a seamstress designer, and she is holding a lot of personal baggage, carrying around a lot of things with her. As a result of that, she begins to grow something. I don't want to go further than that because it has a very interesting angle to it. It's very sci-fi, it's very horrific, and I think that the special effects are amazing and interesting, and it's a really cool idea. So I think that alone, yeah, I think this is worth a watch. It's not the highest quality, but what they've done with the budget is phenomenal. And I really liked the story. Again, something very unpredictable. So that I would, if you're a horror fan, which I hope you are, if you're here, I would put that on your list. I watched Mama. This is a rewatch I did for Does This Offend You? We did an episode on Mama, and Mama and Evil Dead Rise. And I had not watched Mama in years. And this film was so different to what I remember it as. Basically, we follow a man who is seeking his two nieces who have gone missing in this violent rampage, and they are missing for years and years and years, and then one day they're finally found, and they keep talking about someone called Mama. It's a very supernatural horror. It has Jessica Chastain in it, and she's like very grungy and punk rock. It's a very interesting story that has a lot of whimsical gothic visuals, and I thought it was really good. It was a lot deeper than I remember. It's about parenthood and how you're raised, nature versus nurture, all of that good stuff. And yeah, I really enjoyed the rewatch. I would recommend. I watched Thanksgiving, which I did a review on. I watched Saltburn, which I did a review on. Loved it. I did Evil Dead Rise again for Does This Offend You? Before I rewatched it, I went and looked at what I gave it for the score. Halfway through it, I was like, man, this deserves a bigger score. This is insane. But then it kind of just like ended. And although the end is climactic, this film is so interesting because there isn't really a lot of layers to it, which I think is Evil Dead, you know? There's not a lot that happens. It's just carnage from start to end, kind of like the sadness, which I do really respect, but I think that's probably why I didn't give it a higher score. But it is an absolute hell of a time. It's a hell of a time. If you like carnage films, this is it. It is about a family living in a high-rise apartment when an earthquake brings something back and unleashes it's insane. And it's got a very interesting structure from the start to the end. But it also it's just bloody goodness. It's just gore. Oh my God, the gore is phenomenal in this film. I finally got to go see Killers of the Flower Moon. I really enjoyed it. I went with my husband and he hated it. It is a very long film. It's 3.5 hours long. I wouldn't say even it feels like that, but I was preparing myself. This film was very different to what I thought it was going to be like. I thought it was going to be all about an FBI case, and it really is not. There's like a pinch of it. But the film is about a man who moves into this county or town where there is the Osage family who are very wealthy and have stricken oil, I guess is the terminology. They start getting picked off one by one, murdered. It's just not what I thought it was. I thought it was going to be a murder mystery, and it really isn't. It's just a very sinister tale of evil and how evil walks among everybody. I really liked it for that. There was a lot to think about afterwards and during. I really enjoyed that film, so happy with that. I watched The Thing. This was a rewatch I just did with my patrons. My friend Rich, he played this for us on our Discord, and we watched it with a couple of people who haven't seen it yet. It was also really interesting because we watched it with our Norwegian friend, Sina, who knew what the conversation was at the start of the film, which I'd always looked up translation for it, but it's really interesting thinking of that from the perspective of people who know what's going on. If you don't know, if you haven't seen The Thing, there is a conversation at the start where you're not meant to know or understand what's happening. So it's very interesting to see that from the perspective of someone who understands the language. Amazing film, transformations, great, story of isolation and paranoia. If you haven't seen The Thing, it is set in remote Antarctica where a group of American researchers go there and something is wrong. Something is very wrong and something begins to take over their dwelling. I watched Climax again. I hadn't seen this in years. I didn't remember it being so dialogue heavy. I remembered it being just a shit show of emotions and carnage. I'm a huge fan of Gas Burn Away, so I'm always a fan of this one, but I watched it with a bunch of people who hadn't seen it, so that was really interesting, but just interesting to rewatch it. And this is a film that you definitely get more out of the second watch, and it feels like a film that you should never watch a second time because it's very disturbing, but knowing what's about to transpire and how the events unfold, it's really interesting watching it back from the start. The film is based on a true legend in Paris about a group of dancers who are at a rehearsal living, rural during winter as well. So they're kind of snowed in and they are doing rehearsals and they have this party, and then this incident happens at this party that just shakes them all to their core. It's a very dialogue heavy, and I totally forgot that and I misled a lot of people. But it was a really good and interesting rewatch. I'm so glad I got to rewatch it. I watched Manodrome. I like this film way more than a lot of people, and I can tell you what, people are tanking this for reasons, for social and personal reasons to them, because the film toys with the idea of incels. It is about a man who I would say he's like a stereotypical, he's meant to be like an average guy, but his girlfriend becomes pregnant and he is on the verge of freaking out about it, and you can tell he's a very insecure guy. They show this through several different scenes and several different situations, and he just meets the right person who sends him over the edge, and it's in ways that this person and this group that tries to adopt him could never have predicted, and it just shows, I guess, the struggles of not being able to express yourself properly and not being allowed to express yourself in a healthy manner. I think a lot of people judge or take it a different way, but I didn't see it like that at all. I can understand when you're dealing with, because it is a very disturbing film, and when you're dealing with such disturbing themes and ideas and situations and shots and moments, it does feel like they're trying to paint a bad light to certain things, but I think that you're meant to follow it from the start for a reason, you know what I mean? Like, it's a full film for a reason. I felt it was beautiful, and I really enjoyed this one. I would recommend it to you guys. It is a hard watch, but if you like hard watches, which, again, if you're here, you probably will, I do recommend ignoring the reviews and making up your own mind. I watched Napoleon. Destiny has brought me this pork chop. This was such a funny movie. Again, another long one. I think it was only 2.5 hours, this one. I feel like I've just sat in the cinema for so long over the past 2 weeks. I will see anything that Phoenix is in. I love him. I adore him. This film was not for me, though. I was hoping it was going to start from the beginning of his life, but it really doesn't. It starts, when I guess the first battles are being had, or not really battles, but when I guess his story starts into why he became such a prominent figure. His dialogue in this film is wacky as hell. He gets these one-liners that I don't know if I was meant to find half of this film funny that I did, but it was funny. It was so strange. And I guess that might be the humorous thing, is like the juxtaposition between how serious his role in history and society and war was compared to like his goofiness. And I'm not, I don't know, maybe his goofiness is the wrong word, but just, it's a very weird film, I will say. I was entertained. It was fine. I went in knowing it was going to be a war film. I would say the grading is very, very weird note, but the grading is such a strange choice for such epic shots, and I don't go to the film for epic films, landscapes, and especially action shots very often. When I do, I am wowed, and this one did wow me. It was phenomenal what they could do with the battle scenes. But the grading, my God, everything was all blue or all yellow. And even some of the shots in like the palaces and all that kind of stuff, the houses, the fortresses, I just couldn't understand why they did that to these spectacular shots. You think a film with Napoleon, it could be all of these elegant emerald colors and rich reds and deep blues and all these royal colors, and they really sucked that out, which was very interesting. But I guess a lot of this it takes place in different countries during really grim times, so I feel like that emotionally is what they were trying to convey, but I guess I just wanted something different, or I just thought it was just so epic. So that was interesting. I watched Leave the World Behind, which I did a review for. Please go watch the review if you haven't. I would really appreciate that. That one's coming out soon on Netflix, and it was not what I expected. It really shocked me. So if you do want to watch my review, it's spoiler free. Check that one out. I watched Dix the Musical. Okay, a lot of people thought I would not like this film, but I had to remind people, I like silly films. I don't have a problem with silly films. I actually kind of enjoy them. They scratch. I'm dyslexic, if you hadn't figured that out by now and you've been watching for a long time. And my brain can do funny things with words, but also funny things with thoughts. And sometimes a certain thing I really enjoy is watching something that's totally goofy and over the top and just plain dumb. And I found that in Dix, but I actually think Dix is pretty clever. So it scratched the part of my brain with like let's make this like over the top, just camp isn't even the word for it, but let's do something that's just totally self-aware, crazy, wacky, aloof madness, but let's do it in a smart way. So the premise of this film is it's a musical written by two gay guys who play two straight guys in the film. And they're like hypersexual men as well. So it's very interesting because they don't play straight though. They play them as gay men playing straight people. I can't, it's just so clever because it's a commentary on how a lot of films and I guess musicals as well, especially, are made by gay men, and then it's meant to be a straight role in the film or musical Broadway production, etc. So it's a very interesting look at, or satire, I guess, to that extent, but then the musical on top, and everything is just so silly. It's also about two men who are twins separated at birth, and they have to like find each other again, Parent Trap style. So I got a lot out of that. I'm a big Parent Trap fan, so there was just like so many weird things that that's what I meant, like just really tickled my brain and like gave it that itch that it needed. There was The last 20 minutes of this film, though, some people absolutely loved, some people absolutely hated. For me, I probably loved the part you hated and hated the part you loved, and it really threw me. There was so much going for it, and then I had to go a star down. Did I even rate it on here? Yeah, I did. I rated 6. But I honestly, now I will not forget it, but I keep thinking about it. And I do think it's just a funny, interesting moment in time. And it has Megan Thee Stallion in it, and she is phenomenal. So that was one of the most memorable things I've watched this month for good reason. The last film I watched was The Royal Hotel. I feel like this film affected me in a very different way than it did most people. I saw it got really bad reviews on IMDb, but you guys seem to think it's okay. It has a very soft approach to a very dire situation. It's about 2 girls who go out, who are backpacking around Australia, and they end up going to a rural pub to work to earn money. But while they're there, the locals give them a very hard time. The interesting thing about this film is it didn't go as far as I thought it would, but I felt like the way it captured the tension and danger was just so realistic and so scary. I found this film to be just so well casted. I'm amazed, not only by the leads, Julia Gardner, but all of the people who play the locals. That's like everyone I've known to be like that to a T. It's so scary. It was very intense, and it really moved me emotionally. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time, and I just thought it was really well done. I know it's based on a true story, and it doesn't really capture that kind of same story. It just kind of follows the same lead about 2 girls working in a pub, not really the same events. And I honestly don't want to watch that documentary for a little while because this one made me so emotional. I just thought it was a phenomenal take on it, and I really believed it. I thought it was so realistic. If you have been on the edge about seeing this one, probably watch it. I'm sure it's out now for most of you on VOD. Unfortunately for us, it only just came out last week, even though it's been out in America for a month and a half. So that was fun. And it's an Australian film, so I don't know how that works. But yeah, I would recommend that one. Okay, for TV, I watched Escaping Twin Flames. I think that's the name of it. It's the Netflix doco series. This one, very twisted. I wasn't expecting all of the turns in it. It is about this group that is kind of like a self-help group about love, and it turns very sinister very quick. It has recaps from all people who are affected by it, and a lot of really interesting footage because they were able to obtain a lot of the calls which happened online. If you like true crime, it is it to a T, and very cultish, very very chilling, and just especially when you deal with people and their love life, it's just so twisted and how they manipulate people. I found it really effective, and I think I binged the whole thing straight away. How could I not? I needed to know what was happening. My friend who watched it, I don't want to call her out, but she said she found some of the interviews to be a little bit dicey and from some colorful characters. And I do think that if you do find that in these kinds of documentaries, especially for cults, you've got to remember that these are the people in society that feel outcasted and othered, and of course they're looking for love and looking for acceptance somewhere. So if you ever feel like someone's a little bit off, which is, I mean, it makes sense, not everyone's telling the whole truth, but especially in these circumstances, it's probably because they probably are a little bit off, because that's why they're not accepted within, their group or their community, which is why they look for love somewhere else. And those are the people who are more susceptible to this kind of situation. So I found it to be really powerful, and I really recommend it if you like Netflix true crime. I watched the Ghost Train series, which is also on Netflix, and this is an Australian series. I watch a lot of Australian stuff. We got more, but this is about the ghost train that used to be in Luna Park in Sydney, and I had always heard about this, and I think I watched like a 60 minutes or something like that on the ghost train. Basically, there was this huge fire that happened, and it's uncovering the background for that, and it's more of an ABC kind of the way it's put together. It's not as overly produced and reliant on just the evidence given by the interviews. It's a lot of investigation by journalists and following that, and them really paraphrasing stuff over the top to make the storyline make sense. And, you know, they're having conversations like, should we go look in there? Oh my God, let's listen to this tape. But it's still, the information is there, and it was very compelling. And again, another one I binged. And yeah, it's very sad. It's a very sad story because there's deaths of children in it, and it's terrifying. But I feel like they got a really good conclusion from putting it together. So that's all that you can hope for. So yeah, I would recommend that one if you're interested. I finished Goosebumps, and I really wanted to mention this because the end of Goosebumps is absolutely wild and not in a good way. The Goosebumps TV show, I talked about it last month. It's very young adult. It's not presented in the way I thought it would be, with each episode being kind of about a different aspect, like a different, you know, the haunted mask, the dummy, all that kind of stuff. They do start off doing that, but it all kind of blends over, like, together, and it's all about the relationships between this new generation of kids. But the series ends, the way it ends, the last 2 episodes are just null. Like, they make sense, but they're just to set up the new season, and I just didn't appreciate the way it was structured. It's very weird. I just wanted to give a shout out to that to see if anyone else had watched it and felt the same way. The one I'm ashamed of that I told you at the start of, am I ashamed? Maybe I'm not. Who cares about guilty pleasures? Because I have one. At the start of the video, I said I was ashamed by something, and this is Selling Sunset. I watched the new season. Finally, we got a complete season because I felt like last season was just a half season and nothing really happened. This season was a little bit more wild, a little bit more scandalous. It is a ridiculous show, don't get me wrong, but I love Chriselle, and I'm sorry. I will follow her into the fire pit. I just love her. Yeah, it's a very silly show about real estate agents who, you know, want to be on this TV show so they can sell houses that are like soulless and cold, multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar houses. So it kind of breaks up the drama between this company and then also with real estate. So you just get these beautiful walkthroughs of these houses, and it's all shiny and bright, and before you know it, the credits are rolling and it's the next episode. So I get into it though, don't get me wrong. I'm definitely into the drama. Love that. And yes, I watched the new season if you were wondering. I cannot wait for January though, because we've got new Vanderpumps, and I love Vanderpump Rules. Vanderpump Rules is my life. So I'm very excited for that. And then the last thing I watched was Last Stop Lara. I watched this again on Netflix. This is another Australian series, a true crime doco series, actually executive produced by the Duplass brothers, and anything they touch, I'll watch. And this is a very interesting, the way it's put together, because it's about a very serious crime, about a man who's gone missing. And, but they just paint it all about the colorful folks who live in this small town of 10 people, and how they all dislike each other. And it's a lot of very intense interviews, lots of coarse language, because that's Australian. And yeah, this very interesting back and forth between them all, and all of their kind of secrets come out in these interviews. It's another doco series I binged because it was so interesting. Even though, yeah, I don't want to say too much about the mystery, but I felt like just the personalities were just hypnotizing in the best and worst way possible. So much so that they're kind of making fun of them while they're doing the documentary. Yeah, I don't know how I felt about any of it, but I watched it all. And I enjoyed it. So if you're looking for something very interesting and unusual, that will be your ticket. Anyway, that's everything I watched this month, although there'll be a couple more come with me's this week. I'm so excited for some of the films that have coming up, so make sure you're subscribed. And of course, if you're looking to find out more about Leave the World Behind, something that I saw this month, but I didn't really touch on too much in this video, make sure to check out this video here. I have it all here for you, and it is shocking. It's shocking, shocking news, so make sure you check that out. Stay safe and stay spooky. Bye, friends.